Whoa, 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 whoa. Today, and I'm gonna give you a for my new microphone and lighting setup. Yeah. All right. This light's kind of stupid, but I'll do this video with it. All right. Let's get into this. Lateralizing spirituality. What does it mean? What does it mean? What the does it mean? I don't know. Lateralizing spirituality. What do you gotta know if your Kundalini is rising and you don't want it to go sideways, or lose steam, or drop and go down your leg? Those are all three very common themes that happen to people that have trouble raising Kundalini. Now let's get into it. Lateralizing spirituality. Number 1. Developing siddhas. Developing siddhas, or siddhis, or powers. Special powers. Trying to develop them. And why is this a problem? What is a siddha? A siddha is generally a brain center that's in the Sahasrara. There are many brain centers in the Sahasrara Padma, or Sahasrara chakra. And what happens is, as the Kundalini rises through the chakras, it may get in a certain chakra, such as the heart. The heart has correlating brain centers, powers in that chakra that come alive while the Kundalini is in that chakra. It's only temporary, so you can make it permanent if you put up a block and lateralize your spirituality. And what happens is, when you start developing like a power of the heart or of the throat, whatever powers that come, that's a whole nother video. There's so many different powers, siddhas, that correlate to the different chakras. And let's say, okay, for instance, you try to do it with the throat. You try to, let's say, speech. You try to become like a master speaker. I'm assuming that's a power, a siddha of the throat. If you do so, or you try to manifest things into reality with speech, and you try to develop it consistently, you will put a block up at that chakra. And you may exhibit and develop those powers, but it will go no further. The Kundalini will be stuck. And this is because generally, when developing siddhas, it leads to ego inflation. And the ego is not tamed, it's not subdued, and generally, the spiritual path is not reached till Makara. So anytime you try to develop powers below the Makara, whether it's even the third eye or below, you're running the risk of lateralizing your spirituality and stopping Kundalini in its tracks. You have free will. You can do this. There's nothing morally wrong. I don't see anything wrong with it, other than the fact that Kundalini wants to rise. It wants to reach its goal. It's an opposite polarity of the masculine principle. It wants to, just like opposite ends of a magnet, it wants to rise and go up through Bindu. So you stop it and it'll cause you some issues. It may even cause issues, with the related glands in the area, or the organ that's in the area. It could cause the blocked energy. It could cause, heart problems. Even in the throat, if it's blocked in the throat, it can cause heart problems or chest palpitations, high blood pressure, hypertension, so on and so forth. So lateralizing spirituality through developing siddhas is a common mistake, and it's not recommended. You must forego developing siddhas until pinnacle is reached enlightenment is reached, and then all powers will be available to you. All powers that you are supposed to have will be available to you. Then is when you use them, if you have any desire left to do so. You probably won't. So, okay. So siddhas, no bueno. Es no bueno. Siddhas es no bueno. And also, when Kundalini, the siddhas early on, generally, let's say you have like Kundalini at the solar plexus. You may exhibit those powers according to the Sasahara, the brain centers. Brain centers are also called brain dalas. Brain dalas. And you may have powers, but as soon as the Kundalini rises beyond that chakra, those powers won't exist anymore. They're too unpredictable. The only time you may exhibit those powers for prolonged periods is if there's such a block that it cannot get above and it keeps hitting and staying in the heart or staying in the throat, and it'll stay there, the Kundalini, and it's prana and it's vayas, and what you'll have is you will have them powers, but only for that chakra. You won't get them all. You won't get the ones up here, and you could develop them, and that's what I call lateralizing spirituality. Okay, number 2. So siddhas, don't develop them. Forget about them. They cause attachment, ego inflation anyways. The goal is to get Kundalini up through the Bindu, upper out process. Unload your karma, become unattached, become a spiritual being, and get into oneness, get into absorption, which is also called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Number 2, trying to become a savior before your time, before pinnacle experience, before you are worthy. No good. No good. Don't try to do it. Anytime that you are not in the Makara or above, anytime you have thoughts of, I'm God, I'm Jesus, I'm Krishna, I'm Buddha, I'm Muhammad, I'm Timothy Christ, for instance. Let's say for me, I'm Timothy Christ. Anytime you get something like that, you're asking for trouble. And like I said, if your Kundalini has not reached Makara or above, and if it's anywhere down below, which most people's Kundalini rising is, let's be honest. To get to Makara and above it's not easy. I haven't met too many people, even on YouTube, that exhibit the qualities of a person that has Makara or above rising. There are some, and there has been some in the past, but they're far and few. So trying to tell yourself or thinking that you are God or you are this or that, it just leads to ego inflation and attachment. And at that point, you cannot handle it. You are not detached from your thoughts enough. You're not detached from your desires. You're not detached from your thought patterns, so on and so forth, enough to handle the thoughts that I am special, I am God, I am holier than thou art thou, or whatever they say. So get over it. Don't think it. You're still the normal person you are, that you've always been growing up. It's just now Kundalini has chosen to become kinetic in your spine and is rising. And until you've reached pinnacle experience and experience of absorption, just lay off it. I mean, you'll know the truth once that happens, and you'll be content with not telling anybody at that point, because you'll know it and you'll exude it, and people will know it. You won't even have to tell them. They'll be able to see it in you that something special is exuding like a light shining from your being. So wait till that point until you're worthy, until you've reached pinnacle, Bindu, plateau experience, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and you can control the Kundalini and move into Nirvikalpa at will. Then maybe you can call yourself God, but at that point you won't have the desire to do so. So, just like anything else, when you reach that point. But people will know it. They'll know it. So, okay, number 3, setting up shop. This is a big one. I mean, you see it. You see it on YouTube especially. And am I committing the same act that I am speaking of? To a point. But my channel's named Kundalini rising. It's a very niche, very narrow name. It wasn't meant to cover broad audiences. It was meant so I can disseminate Kundalini rising, helpful information to people that are in need at a cost of free. So you have other people that have very vague spiritual new age names, and that's intentional. Their intention, these people claim to be spiritual catalysts or whatever, so on and so forth, and they got 10, 20 different ways of making money off the deal. That is what I call setting up shop. Anything, any type of rising said person may have had is stopped. They are wielding the power of the Kundalini and any newfound powers of persuasion, of charisma, so on and so forth, in order to dupe people into paying them for help, spiritual help. Never charge people. You can't charge. If you're a true spiritual person, if you're a guru or a yogi or a master, if you truly are and you know it in your heart, you cannot charge people for said stuff. You cannot. Now, I meant, can you make money indirectly off a channel? Through advertisements or, through donations, because people love you and they love, what you're doing, and if you've helped them greatly, that's one thing. But, to charge people on Skype for advice, to ignore the word Kundalini and then talk really vague spiritual terms and not give the full truth of Kundalini, the Devi, the goddess Kundalini, through omission, lying, you've lateralized. You're setting up shop. You're setting up spiritual shop. And the people that do it, you know it. And these people may not even have a rising, and most likely they don't. And like I said, any rising they may have had, or maybe they've had a couple uncoilings, which is called arousal, where it uncoils, it goes up maybe to your solar plexus, and then it'll go back asleep. Or maybe you'll have one experience while you're meditating, like the room will spin, and then you won't have another experience for months, a year. Your Kundalini is not active anyways. It's not awake. An awakening is from Makara and above. Activations anywhere below, generally from the heart to the Makara. That's an activation. And anything below the heart, you're running the risk of it going back asleep unless you follow all 8 limbs of yoga with an open heart, sincerely. Alright. So these are the three main reasons that I see lateralizing of spirituality happening, lateralizing of the Kundalini. These are the 3 pitfalls of main concern, and all 3 of these pitfalls lead to ego inflation. Ego inflation can turn terrible. I mean, it can cause an inflated ego that can lead you to some terrible things. It will definitely lead to a stagnation, lateralization of Kundalini, but it also can lead you to do some terrible things. And it generally also leads to, eventually, sometime in the future, is a popping of this bubble and a complete deflation, which can lead to major depression, schizophrenia, anxiety beyond belief, all kinds of mental issues. Like I said, it could cause, if you get stagnation in certain chakras, you can cause the gland that's correlated with the chakra. It can cause damage to the gland. It can cause, mucho problemos. So, no es bueno. No do. Don't do it. Now, there are some other factors I like to talk about. They're not quite what I would call lateralization of spirituality, but they may cause stagnation. They may even cause Kundalini to run down your leg or to head downward pressure. And here we go. Number 1, sex, masturbation. What can it do for you? First of all, anytime you ejaculate as a man, as a woman, I'm sure the same rules apply. I don't know how much of a detriment it is to the Kundalini because I'm not a woman. But through my own experience, through reading, and so on and so forth, ejaculation is a no-no. It's not morally wrong. It just zaps you of your prana, of your spiritual essence, of your energy. The orgasm itself is a radiation of this energy out to your second chakra. Also, in the semen is a ton of this energy. It's basically brain fluid, spine fluid, mixed with sperm. So when it comes out, there goes a bunch of energy. So now the Kundalini needs a tremendous amount of this energy in order to break its blockages and to rise. So sex and or masturbation, especially excessive, can lead to stagnation of the Kundalini through draining of its energy resources. However, it can also lead, because what it does is it ends up pushing the energy downward towards your animal nature, because it's at the lowest level. It's at the second chakra, and sometimes some people consider it first chakra, but it's second chakra. And what it'll do is, if your Kundalini is a certain spot, it'll force it downwards towards that chakra, because you're so focused always on the sexual nature, which is the lower animal nature of reproduction. And eventually it can funnel the Kundalini back down and down your leg, and you will actually feel like a bliss energy down your right or your left thigh generally. And this is through my experience too early on. So you learn that abstinence is key. Muy bueno. Key. Very key. You can actually feel the bliss seeping down your leg. You do not want Kundalini going down your leg chakras. That's how you end up with Adolf Hitler. That's how you end up with Jack the Ripper, Joseph Stalin, characters like that. And I'm sure there are women characters too in history, but generally they're not as violent as men are by nature, are more physical and manifest violence. Whereas women can be manipulative and, like a witch. They can do dark things too, but generally men do darker things. Okay, so number 2, wrong thoughts, lying, fabricating, no good. It won't generally push your energy down, but it'll cause blockages. It'll cause blockages wherever your Kundalini is. If you're lying, if you're not being honest with yourself and others, no good. That's part of the plan, the part of the discipline. You got to stay positive. You got to be truthful. First of all, you got to be truthful with yourself, in your heart. You got to want to tell the truth in your heart. And you do got to tell the truth. I mean, sometimes you can omit stuff if it's too hard to face, if it's too hard to discuss with people, if you don't want to really discuss the true raw nature of your thoughts with people too much, you just stay quiet. But you don't want to blatantly lie and say and fabricate lies that hurt people. And you don't want to lie about yourself and lie to yourself. Those things will stagnate Kundalini and cause blockages in your chakra, therefore will stop the rising. They're it's not as significant as the top 3 as the lateralization, but it will do the same. And generally people that have risings learn early on in their heart, and they know it in their heart, that these people have a hard time lying. It'll be a key change in your heart. Generally it happens before the arousal, before the activation of the Kundalini. You will know in your heart that something has changed. And it generally begins with being honest with yourself and others. And then generally a catalyst happens, and bam, before you know it, Kundalini somewhere in your spine. So, taking drugs will definitely put a block in any of your chakra. It'll stagnate the Kundalini where it's at. Generally, drugs and sex and masturbation go hand in hand too. So it's impure in your mind. It's impure. It leads to impure thoughts. Taking drugs, it leads to further attachments. But generally, when you're taking drugs, it'll definitely slow down the process. But as long as you keep meditating and you keep a discipline, even if you can't quite control your addictions yet, if you can just break the cap above the third eye, your addictions will just melt away very rapidly after that. In my experience, I had troubles. I've quit a few of the addictions early on in my activation process. It took time. It always takes time. I was a person that had many addictions. I was very talented as a young boy, as a young man. I was very smart. I was very athletic. I had charisma. When I blew out of it with drug addiction, I blew a lot of my chances. I was accepted into a really high engineering college, one of the best in the nation, and I passed up. I was supposed to wrestle on a third scholarship, and I pissed it away. I did that even while drinking almost daily by the time I was a senior. So, taking drugs, it should be your number one goal to knock out addiction one at a time. You can't do them all at once. But meditate, eat right thought, do some pranayama for purification, do some concentration techniques, do some exercise, and if you can just break that cap, the Kundalini, and then surrender to the Kundalini and let her rise, be devotional to her, it'll melt those addictions away. But either way, if you can quit addiction before it even gets to that point, it'll make it easier for it to rise. So there you go. Poor diet, another thing that will stagnate. If you're always eating highly processed foods, sugars, added sugars, foods with a lot of chemicals, sweets, just garbage. You know what the garbage is. Drinking a lot of soda, beer. You're asking for stagnation. You're asking for blockages. You're asking for some lateralization. Now, will it go down your leg from that? No, I don't think so. But it will slow the process down. Don't do it. Change your diet. Revamp it. Generally, when a person activates Kundalini, has an arousal or activates it through a near-death experience, so on and so forth, through a master, they notice right away they're craving different foods. You'll start craving more vegetables. Maybe all of a sudden you start drinking V8. You used to hate it your whole life. You'll see things like that. You'll start eating bananas and apples, and you're like, what the heck? Why am I eating bananas and apples? I'm not a monkey. I never liked this stuff before, and now you love it, and you can't get enough of it. And generally the Kundalini will put you in the right diet. But saying that, you can fall out of that, and you don't want to. You want to know consciously that eating right is part of it. It's part of the path, and it's part of helping it rise. You've got to be nourished. Early on, you can do some fasting in order to kind of purify your body and some of your chakras. But once you get to a more advanced level of Kundalini and it gets up here, you don't want to fast. It's going to take all the energy your body's that it's got in order to help the Kundalini make that final movement. So, and the energy will be so great at that point in your body, it'll be exuding, it'll turn to bliss, that your brain needs all the energy you can get at that point. So fasting is not recommended earlier on in the Kundalini path, but later is not. You can do whatever you want. You can fast even, later on. If you're still overweight, but generally speaking, you could, I don't want to stereotype. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down. But generally, you can look at a person's physique. You can look at the health they're in. And you can know if they have had Kundalini rising. You know. You can tell by looking at them. Generally, their bodies are in darn good shape. And if they're not, they will be. Because the Kundalini will make sure of it. It will change your desires for types of food. It'll get you to get active, to get exercising. Not overdo exercise, but to do the right things for your body, to be compassionate about yourself, to treat your body, the temple of the Lord, temple of God, your body, to treat it with compassion. That's the most important thing right there. I mean, that is important. You got to treat yourself with love and compassion, and for the Kundalini. So, proper diet is important. It'll force you to eat properly, and as you change from a different guna mindset, become more sattvic. You eat more sattvic. You know, if you go from tamastic to rajasic to sattvic, your foods shift, and generally the Kundalini shifts you to a sattvic mind. You know, might switch it first from tamastic to rajasic, which is more of an active, from lazy to active, and then into like a more of a meditative mind, and then the foods change. Generally more to like a whole food, more vegetables. But being totally vegetarian is not 100% necessary, but eating whole foods and drinking plenty of water is. And I say this with experience. People can attack me all they want and say I'm not compassionate. I love and I respect animals, and I care about them very much so, and I am respectful, and I am grateful for their sacrifice. I always am grateful, and if you're grateful for the animal sacrifice, there should be no problem. That's why the food's there. It's always there. An eagle eats what it has. The eagle isn't immoral. It just eats what its place is. And humans are omnivores. Alright. Fear. Can't allow fear to consume you at any point in the Kundalini process. It can lead to all kinds of mental neurosis. It can cause schizophrenia, psychosis. It can block your chakras. It can do all kinds of things. Fear is, in my opinion, it can be a disease all in itself. How to overcome fear? Meditate. Become detached from your thoughts with meditation, concentration techniques. Also, another key factor into dissipating fear is surrendering to the Kundalini and the process. Once you get that part, it's like you graduated 12th grade. Boom, you'll feel a difference. Once you get it in your being, in your heart, a total surrendering to the process. Because if you don't surrender to the Kundalini, it will feel like it's possessing you. It'll do things to buck you, to do this and that, and it'll become a very unpleasant process. You must surrender to the process and trust the Kundalini as it is part of you. It knows you better than you do, and it will do the right thing. And sometimes you can barter with it and beg with it and get it to go easy on you, but it knows when to go easy and hard on you. And just trust it does. And trust it's got compassion for you. She does. She's got a lot of compassion, and she's going to change you for the better. So entrust in that and surrender. Never get consumed by fear. Fear is a disease. All right. Number 6, I just want to finish up with never think you're above others. A true Buddha will always sit on the floor with his disciples. True Buddha does not sit above his disciples. He is not above. He may be temporarily, spiritually above, but we are all human beings on the path to sainthood. So have compassion for others. Do fruitless service for others. Don't look to help others, but if they come to you, help them. And don't expect anything in return. Dissipate fear. Watch for ego inflation. Don't develop your siddhis until after Navakalpa Samadhi. Don't set up shop. And open the heart up. And the Kundalini, if you don't do these things I've talked about, or try your best not to, the Kundalini will rise. Thank you.
There's Rocky.